Hello, and welcome to the Biotiverse.
And today we're talking about world records, the highest honor in the world of competition. Today, there are over 40,000 world record categories, each ranging in admiration and absurdity. However, none are quite like that of domino toppling. One of the strangest, yet most alluring records ever conceived. Nobody actually knows what domino's original purpose was, they just kinda showed up one day. But domino toppling is the practice of standing dominoes in a sequence with the goal of triggering a chain reaction where each domino in line falls on top of one another. The sport began back in the 70s when Pennsylvania native Bob Speka Jr. set the first world record on national TV of 11,111. This triggered a worldwide domino toppling craze that still exists to this day, with domino builders aiming to take the world record for themselves. But unlike boxing or chess, which relies on one's physical and mental prowess, domino toppling instead tests one's precision and patience. Standing a single domino isn't particularly difficult. However, one mistake and it's all over.
Seems one of those mistakes just happened.
Please just say the line I hired you to say.
Lol, just having a cheeky bit of fun. One of these mistakes occurred November 18th, 2005. Days before a new world record was to be set, someone left a window open. On its own, a small mistake, but this would go on to set off a chain reaction of consequences that can still be felt to this day.
This is the story of Dominomus, the bird who ruined a world record. Our story begins with Robin Paul Viers, Mr. Domino himself. Viers' love for dominoes began shortly after the works of Speka Jr., inspiring him to devote much of his free time to advancing the sport, both through building and coaching. His career highlights include working conjointly with Dutch airline company KLM to detonate the first domino line on board an airborne aircraft. He also set many world records of his own, including in 1986 by toppling over 700,000 dominoes live on air. Yet none compared to his greatest achievement. In 1998, the man met with Endemol, a Dutch-based media company, to propose the creation of an annual event where a team of passionate builders would use dominoes to create what they called dynamic art. Basically, they would line the blocks in such a way that it created the illusion of an image. Here's someone who made a minion through dynamic art. But if you thought they stopped at just making pretty pictures, you're wrong. I don't know what to tell you, you're wrong. They then toppled these artworks with the goal of breaking the current standing world record, a 2-for-1 special for all domino enjoyers across the globe.
All 7 of them.
That was rude. My grandma liked dominoes. Anyways, he called this hypothetical event D-Day. Yeah, I see where he was coming from, but I think I've heard of that somewhere before. I just can't think of it. But after sleeping on it, both parties agreed to air the program to over 30 different countries worldwide later that year, under a new name, Domino Day. The program went on to become a major success, setting the new world record to 2.3 million dominoes just in its first year. And you heard me right, I said first. Because of their success, Endemol continued their partnership with Viers Productions to bring Domino Day to the world for many years to come. Each year, the show consists of 2 main sections, the Creative Challenge and the Builders Challenge. The first was the previously mentioned dynamic art portion of the event. Each year, an overlapping theme was shared between multiple pieces of artwork. If the selected theme happened to be countries of the world, one section of dominoes would depict the Americas, whereas another would demonstrate Japanese culture. The Builders Challenge is where things got interesting. Most of the Creative Challenge sections were connected, allowing the falling stones to easily transition into one another. But at various points, builders would be tasked with closing a gap that was intentionally left to separate additional art pieces from the main line. The catch was they were only permitted to start working on this bridge after the first domino had already toppled. This gave the builders approximately 2 minutes to construct a 5-meter line, a stressful, yet admittedly exciting risk. If successful, the Builders Challenge provides a greater number of fallen dominoes to the record attempt. But if failed, the chances of setting a new record would be greatly reduced. Though, to their credit, each year since the event began, Viers and his team were able to deliver on their world record promise, with each year providing more elaborate art and excitement. Fast forward to 2005. Just as expected, this year looked primed to break the world record for the 7th time in a row. The event was expected to begin at the Frisian Expo Center in the Netherlands on November 18th. This year, 100 builders from 12 countries spent months setting up over 4.5 million dominoes across the venue. This year's Creative Challenge theme was the Theater of Eternal Stories. Basically, builders would depict scenes from world-famous stories including Pinocchio, The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Robin Hood, and many others. But little did they know, they were setting up for their own perpetual tale that would soon unfold.
That line sucks.
What do you mean that sucked? I spent like 2 months figuring that one out.
Well, consider it time wasted, you small mammal.
Oh, well, consider your body wasted. How about that?
Another stinker, human.
Alright, let's get to the main event. November 14th, 2005. 4 days before Domino Day was set to begin. The entire sequence for the Creative Challenge had already been prepared, but would not be shown off to the public until opening day, both for the surprise and avoiding accidents aspects. However, they were willing to make one exception for a local news station, granting them a sneak peek of sorts. But during setup for the interview, one of the cameramen opened a window. Of course, this invited a female house sparrow to enter the venue. The sparrow was nicknamed Dominomus, a direct Dutch translation of domino sparrow, and it's never a good sign when an animal is given a nickname. At first, the bird wasn't directly addressed, as organizers believed the bird would get spooked and try to retreat, and to an extent they were right. The bird did get scared and try to escape. But what they didn't account for was the bird didn't know where it entered from. The bird hit a closed window and fell to the ground. It happened so suddenly, nobody could do anything about it. And of course, it landed atop Domino's. Again, the event was in 4 days, people. Yet that didn't stop the event from being ruined. At least, it would have been, if Mr. Domino wasn't such a genius. He figured something like this may accidentally happen, so he made sure that sequence safeguards were installed. These are mechanisms used in competitive domino toppling, where several dominoes are intentionally skipped in the line, that way in case of a premature topple, not all is lost. 750 of these sequences were installed across the venue, minimizing Dominomus's initial damage to no more than a few hundred, barely a dent compared to the 4 million still standing. But of course, this was no time to relax. The bird was still at large and just knocked over its second sequence of dominoes. Everyone inside of that venue came to the same grim realization. They were now in a race against the clock. At this rate, she threatened to destroy the whole work in just a few hours. They needed to chase that bird out, and they needed to do so quickly. Instantly, security guards took matters into their own hands. They attempted to chase the sparrow into a corner where they could open a window and shoo it out. This strategy, failure. The sparrow just flew higher and went around back to the center of the venue. Camera crews were up next. They attempted to blind the sparrow with their camera flashes and used their equipment bags to capture the disoriented animal. This strategy, failure. Again. By the time the staff could launch their makeshift nets, the bird would fly off. The bags would then instead knock over their own dominoes. Chaos now consumed the venue. Strategies were bounced back and forth, from baiting the sparrow with food, to letting dogs chase down the bird, to just using nets again. No matter what they thought of, the strategy failed or was deemed too dangerous to attempt. Finally, after nearly 2 hours of domino knocking havoc, Mr. Domino arrived at the scene and asked if animal control had been called yet. It had not. Duke Vonnebeheer, a premier Dutch avian management organization, answered the call and arrived shortly on site afterwards. The sent agent was greeted by the sparrow sitting atop another domino, almost taunting him as she flew off and triggered another chain. As a leading force in the industry, the Duke Vonnebeheer representative came well equipped to handle this assignment. They had bait, cages in appropriate traps, actually appropriate nets. So, of course, they took the obvious course of action, which is placing a cage far from the dominoes filled with seed and millet. This way the bird could be drawn away from the action, where it could happily eat and be captured, allowing for easy transport out of the mall. Wait, what?
Did that bastard just shoot the poor soul?
Yeah, I think he did, holy sh... Alright, so we're just on the same page here. Before anybody realized what had happened, Pest Control shot an airsoft rifle at the bird before it could cause more damage to the venue. Again, they shot a rifle, indoors, with people still inside!
The shot was immediately fatal, rupturing her ribcage and detaching her left wing. Dominius fell to the ground, surrounded by her work of destruction. Her total damage? 23,000 dominoes prematurely toppled.
But no, this is not where our story ends. While certainly an unfortunate circumstance met with a clear overreaction, no human injuries or property damage resulted from the confrontation. So you'd probably expect little consequences to follow. This is far from the truth. I mentioned earlier Dominomus was a house sparrow. This species originated from Europe, more specifically Northern Europe, and has since then spread to nearly every corner of Earth, becoming the second most populous bird species ever. This is probably the species you think of when you think of just typical bird. It's truly a pest everywhere it goes. Well, everywhere except the Netherlands. For how common it is, you may be surprised to hear it's on the Dutch Red List of endangered breeding birds.
Might I add, it was just added to this list a year prior, in 2004.
This act gave legal protections to endangered native species within the country. Yeah, it's endangered there. While house sparrow populations continued to grow everywhere else on Earth, back home populations were declining. This decline was for various amount of reasons, but it really doesn't matter. Their placement on the list meant it was punishable by law to kill any members of the species, including one that happens to mess up a Domino world record. The only way to kill one of these birds would be to have a warrant because it was causing some sort of harm to human life. Maybe you could stretch it to say somebody would get a heart attack because all of their hard work was put to waste, but regardless, they didn't have a warrant. News of Dominomus's killing spread across the country later that day, catching the attention of multiple animal rights organizations, including the largest fauna protection society in the country. They immediately filed lawsuits against all parties involved with Domino Day's production, threatening to shut down the event altogether. Fortunately for Endemol and Bayer's productions, due to a clause in the contract with Duke Faunabehir, they're off the hook and blamed it all on the pest control company, abandoning them to face the legal troubles on their own. Sighing a breath of fresh air, Domino Day could still proceed. But suck that fresh air right back up. However, even though their legal troubles were quickly resolved, the court of public opinion was still in full force against the broadcast. Newspapers, blogs, and radio shows devoted time and resources to bringing the story to the international public, a goal that was quickly achieved. Hundreds flocked to the internet to voice their concerns for what they felt was an unjust murder.
I hope that in your next life you become a sparrow and experience the same, real
animal executioners. Green Front is now coming by to remove all the stones.
Hupsegi, shoot a sparrow so that we can see all the pieces of plastic fall over. That bunch of morons stacking up there should get a job.
Others thought the situation was ridiculous and overblown.
It's just a sparrow. No human life. Yet.
Rightly so. The mouse's own fault. ...
I hope that in your next life you become a sparrow and experience the same, real.
Haha, frustrated.
The topic was now unexpectedly an all-out cultures war. But no matter what side you were on, everybody was interested in monetary rewards. Multiple independent parties offered money to those who could avenge the bird and complete its job by knocking over all the dominoes prematurely. One such individual was DJ Ruud de Wild, a radio host and animal rights activist on the top radio network in the Netherlands at the time. In retaliation for the killing, he offered 3,000 euros to anybody who could infiltrate the arena prior to the event's starting time and finish Dominomus's work. Buck, how much money does that equate to nowadays?
That would be $4,102.43.
Thank you, Buck. During his radio show, he offered various solutions for how to accomplish this. One suggestion he made was to release bouncy balls into the building's ventilation system, where they could then roll out to the main floor and knock over the dominoes. Another suggestion was setting off fireworks outside of the venue, where the vibrations would do the work instead. With high emotions and bounties placed to sabotage the world record, the pressure was definitely on. For the remaining days, additional security was deployed and put on patrol for 24 hours a day. And it worked out, because multiple attempts to claim the bounty were enacted. Probably the strangest attempt involved 2 college students who tried to bring pizza into the venue. They claimed to be delivery for some of the cameramen inside, and the guard nearly let them in, but last minute decided to check the pizza boxes just before granting them access to be safe. The first box? Actual pizza. The second box? Actual pizza. The third box? 19 live mice. Yeah, they were hoping to get into the venue, and then when everyone's back was turned, open the box and let the mice run free. The 2 were detained by police shortly thereafter, to whom they admitted their plan to use the mice to claim the ransom money. But probably the most surprising thing out of all of this is the 2 were permitted to stay afterwards as long as they surrendered the mice and actually gave the camera crew the pizza, to which, yeah, they agreed. Finally, come November 18th, the day of the event. Fears of another attack were high, but at this point, no other dominoes were prematurely knocked over. A crowd of protesters, armed with signs, bats, and leaf blowers, stood on the other side of the barricade, but security had the premises secure. Finally, the viewers were allowed in, and Domino Day was set to begin. To break the 2004 world record, Mr. Domino and his team would need to topple over 3,992,398 dominoes, and the chances of doing so looked good, as approximately 4.3 million dominoes were placed ahead of time. When you account for Dominomus's damages, the team had a buffer of about 300,000 dominoes. In other words, even if 7% of the dominoes didn't trigger, the world record would still be broken. Though this was still a possibility, remember, the Builders Challenges had some of these dominoes sectioned off. This means if all 3 Builders Challenges fail, they probably won't break the record. Doubts whether the record could be broken still persisted. But no more anticipation could be built. Finally.
Wat er allemaal precies gaat gebeuren.
6,
Juist.
4, 3, 2, 1.
It's showtime, dus mag het gordijn open in het Domino Theater van de eeuw.
Finally, Domino Day had begun. The first domino fell. Then the next, and then a few more, and they just kept falling from there. All that was left to do was wait. The creative challenge started as a major success. Sure, there was a few dominoes here and there that didn't fall, but this was to be expected. As long as they kept this pace, this portion would not be the bottleneck. Then came Builders Challenge 1. Builders would have to construct several towers made of domino, which would then be used to connect purposely separated tables. And continuing the streak,
Success!
At this point they were doing better than they could have ever hoped for. But it wasn't meant to last. A section of about 45,000 within the Creative Challenge failed to trigger. But this could be made up for in Builders Challenge 2. A single individual would be tasked with performing this one. They would need to build a line of dominoes within a yellow tape barrier. But unfortunately, it was also a failure. It all came down to Builders Challenge 3. At this point, it was unknown whether they could fail this one and also break the world record. Even the slightest mistake meant a total collapse. But despite the odds, they did it. Everybody's worries were aside. After an hour straight of dominoes falling, only one of the 3 building challenges failed, meaning the world record had officially been broken yet again. The new record stood at 4,155,476. Through shock, hardship, fear, and willpower, the entire Domino Day production could finally relax, knowing they had overcome the odds. Finally, Domino Day 2005 could be moved to the history books. At least it should have been. You see, days after everything wrapped up, Guinness revealed to the world that they found something while scouring the footage of the event. During the second Builders Challenge, for a brief second, dominoes stopped falling during the chain. However, one of the builders happened to be located where the chain break occurred. Therefore, they manually started the chain again and hoped nobody would see anything. But as per the rules of the Guinness record, any manual interference required all dominoes from that section to be disqualified from the record's total. Fears of the program failing were again on the table. With bated breath, all anyone could do was wait for Guinness to reveal the new record. Later that day, they revealed the new record was 4,002,136. The record still stood, but by the narrowest of threads. Under the corrected total, they only beat the world record by 9,739 dominoes. This means when you disregard the still standing and cheated dominoes from the equation, and put Dominomus's damage back into the buffer, Dominomus ended up knocking over 70% of the wiggle room they had in practicality. This ended up being the closest margin they ever came to not breaking a world record. Also the most legally and socially threatening event they ever put on. All this turmoil just because during setup for a pre-show interview, one cameraman opened a window to cool down the venue. Well, that's a wrap on Domino Day 2005, but what ended up happening with all parties involved? Well, shortly after the world record was officially certified, Duke Funabahir's court trial officially began. Again, the blame was passed. This time, the agent who shot the bird was the sole party facing charges. After a speedy trial, The jury found the defendant guilty of illegally killing a protected native bird species. The official ruling was as follows. When determining the transaction, the Public Prosecution Service took the professionalism of the company into account. Based on the professionalism, the company should have known better and acted accordingly. This individual was sentenced to pay 200 euros to the Public Prosecution Service. Buck, what does 200 euros account to in today's money?
That would be $273.64. You dumb American.
The employee left the company shortly after on their own accord, but even to this day, they still receive death threats and have even contacted the police to report over 2,000 pieces of hate mail they have received over the past decade and a half. As for Domino Day itself, security precautions were taken to assure another Dominomus never occurred again. The event continued annually until 2009. Each year, Robin and his team continued to break the previous world record except for 2007. The broadcast was expected to continue in 2010, but these plans were halted due to a lack in funding. Sadly, in 2011, Vyers Productions went bankrupt, putting an end to the program for good. Little has been seen of Mr. Domino online since, though in 2020, it was announced Domino Day would be returning to Endemol, with rumors Vyers would continue to be involved in some way. But due to a certain worldwide event, these plans were put on pause and to this day have no new announcement date. But whether the event returns anytime soon or not, you'll be happy to know that Mr. Domino still holds his 2009 world record, and likely will until they try again. Finally, even though Dominomus's body was destroyed fairly badly by the shooting, what remained of it was preserved, and a month later was donated to the Natural Historic Museum in Rotterdam, where she was restored, and on the 1-year anniversary of the event, she was put on display for the public in the museum's Animals with Backstories exhibit. She remained on display for another 6 months until being placed into storage, where she presumably remains to this day. Artifacts of her existence remain longer. Shortly after her death, a memorial website was put up, where people could share poetry, offer condolences to the bird, and just find comfort in one another. It was unfortunately shortly after hacked and pornographic material and viruses were put on the site, but eventually it was restored and it stood for another few years, yay! But even if the website fell, Dominomus's fans did not. Indie band City Light Thief wrote a song about the late bird, which, at the time of this video's recording, just so happens to have the same view count as the amount of dominoes the bird toppled. Though many honors were given to this bird, perhaps the most appropriate one was, each following Domino Day, a small tribute was paid to the bird, a small place of remembrance for the bird who almost ruined a world record. Thanks for watching.